In 1960, the United States government banned one of the key ingredients in America's most beloved soft drink. Not because it was dangerous to sell, it already had been on shelves for nearly 100 years. They banned it because lab tests found it caused liver damage and tumors in animals. That ingredient wasn't in a medicine cabinet. It was in root beer, and for over a century before that ban, root beer wasn't sold as a treat at all. It was sold as medicine. So how did a drink meant to cure your stomach end up in a soda fountain next to milkshakes? And what exactly was hiding inside that dark, foamy bottle? Today, root beer sits in the same aisle as cola and lemon lime soda, and most people assume it's just another flavor invented by some soda company chasing profit. It isn't. Root beer is the only major American soda with roots, literally, in indigenous medicine, colonial home brewing, and a 19th century pharmacist's honeymoon. Every other soft drink on the shelf was built to taste good first. Root beer was built to heal you first and taste good second. That single difference explains almost everything strange about its history, the secrecy around its recipes, the government ban, and why, even today, no legal bottle of root beer contains the ingredient that gave it its name. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what that ingredient was, why it disappeared, and what's really in your root beer now. Long before Europeans reached North America, indigenous peoples across the eastern woodlands were already using the sassafras tree for medicine. They dried its bark, boiled its roots, and brewed the result into a reddish, fragrant tea believed to treat fevers, skin conditions, and stomach trouble. Some tribes ground sassafras leaves into a powder to thicken stews, a practice that, centuries later, would evolve into filet powder, still used in Louisiana gumbo today. Verify exact tribal names and specific medicinal claims by region. When English colonists arrived, they noticed the sassafras trees growing wild across the coastline, and it turned out England already wanted this plant. European explorers had shipped sassafras bark back home decades earlier, where it was brewed into a drink called salop and sold on London street corners as a cheap alternative to coffee and tea. Verify specific explorer names and shipment dates for a brief window in the late 1500s and early 1600s. Sassafras root was one of colonial America's first profitable exports, harvested so aggressively that entire groves were stripped bare, because peeling the bark for sale kills the tree. Back in the colonies, settlers combined sassafras with sarsaparilla, wintergreen, birch bark, and dozens of other wild roots to create what they called small beers, low alcohol. Homemade brews that families passed down like heirlooms. These weren't meant to get you drunk. In an era when drinking water could make you seriously sick, a mildly fermented root beverage was often safer than the well. Even children drank small beer. Root beer, as strange as it sounds, started life as a survival tool. For nearly 200 years, root beer stayed a homemade tradition. No two families' recipes tasted the same. That changed in 1875, when a Philadelphia pharmacist named Charles Hyers tasted an herbal tea during his honeymoon and couldn't stop thinking about it. Verify, the honeymoon origin is widely repeated, but historians note the exact details are uncertain. Hyers took the recipe home, refined it with the help of local chemistry professors, and turned it into a dry powder anyone could buy and brew themselves. But here's what almost nobody knows. Hyers wasn't trying to sell a soft drink. He was a devout Quaker and a fierce opponent of alcohol, and his real goal was to give American drinkers a temperance alternative, something that felt like a treat but carried none of the guilt of a saloon. He originally wanted to call it root tea. His friend, a Baptist minister and Temple University founder named Russell Conwell, convinced him that a name like tea would never sell to hard-drinking Pennsylvania coal miners. Change it to root beer, Conwell said, and the same rough men who'd never touched tea would happily order a beer. Hyers took the advice. It worked. At the 1876 Philadelphia Centennial Exhibition, Hyers gave away free glasses of his new root beer to a curious public, and it was an instant sensation. He didn't stop at flavor. His advertising leaned hard into health claims, branding his drink the temperance drink and the greatest health-giving beverage in the world. This wasn't unusual for the era. This was the age of the American patent medicine boom, when pharmacists across the country were bottling tonics that promised to cure everything from headaches to female troubles. Root beer fit right into that world. It was sold in drugstores, dispensed from soda fountains next to cough syrups, and marketed less like a beverage and more like a prescription you'd actually enjoy taking. Hires wasn't alone for long. In 1898, a bottler in Biloxi, Mississippi named Edward Barq launched his own version using sarsaparilla instead of sassafras. And Barq's root beer was born, a rivalry that still exists on grocery shelves today. Then in 1919, a man named Roy Allen opened a root beer stand in Lodi, California, and made one small but brilliant decision. He served his root beer in ice-cold, frosted mugs. That single detail helped birth A&W, a brand that would go on to build an entire drive-in restaurant empire out of a drink that started as folk medicine. And then Prohibition hit in 1920, and root beer's timing couldn't have been better. With alcohol suddenly illegal nationwide, a drink that had spent 50 years marketing itself as the wholesome, health-conscious alternative to booze was perfectly positioned. Soda fountains exploded across America as social gathering spots, and root beer rode that wave to its peak popularity. Often served as a root beer float, a combination so beloved it appeared in advertisements calling it the great American beverage. But the ingredient that built root beer's identity was quietly becoming a liability. Throughout the early 20th century, scientists began studying safrole, the aromatic oil found in sassafras root and bark that gave root beer its distinctive, slightly medicinal bite. In laboratory tests, animals given doses of safrole developed liver damage. Some developed tumors. The very plant indigenous healers had used for centuries, the plant that built a $100 million American industry, turned out to be carcinogenic in concentrated form. In 1960, the FDA made its move. Safrole was formally banned as a food additive in the United States. Overnight, root beer companies faced an impossible problem. Their signature ingredient, the one their name was literally built on, was now illegal to use. Every major brand had to reformulate, replacing real sassafras oil with artificial flavoring designed to imitate a taste that legally could no longer exist in its original form. Here's the twist almost no root beer drinker realizes. Every bottle of commercial root beer sold in America today, Hires, Barq's, A&W. Every single one is legally required to be flavored artificially. The root in root beer, the ingredient that gave the drink its name, its medicine cabinet reputation, and its century-long identity, is the one thing that can't legally be in it. What you're drinking today is a flavor engineered in a lab to imitate a plant most modern drinkers have never tasted in its original form. You can still buy saffrole-free sassafras extract for home brewing, but true, unmodified sassafras root beer, the way indigenous peoples and 18th century farmers made it, is technically illegal to sell. So the next time you crack open a root beer, remember what you're actually holding, the last legal echo of a 300-year-old indigenous medicine, filtered through a Quaker pharmacist's marketing genius. A Prohibition-era health craze, and a federal safety ban that erased its own name from its ingredients. Nearly everything about root beer that made it root beer, banned, forgotten, and replaced without most people ever noticing. Would you still drink it knowing the real sassafras is illegal? Let me know below.